Downsizing to a smaller nest? What does that even mean? Minimalism? Maximalism? Maybe something in between? Today's thoughts of an empty nester are about downsizing and books. Howdy everyone, it's Rebecca, the Colorful Book Nester. And on this channel we discuss books, do a bit of adult coloring, and share experiences and thoughts of an empty nester. Today we'll be focusing and fussing and discussing about my love for reading and downsizing from 2 separate properties to a 1-bedroom apartment that I now share with my husband. How are we going to make this work? So, downsizing from 2 properties into a 1-bedroom apartment that's already full of furniture and been set up as a place to actually live. It's a 1-bedroom apartment, and this is where we're going to be while we plan our next move. We don't really know how long that's going to be. It could be 4 months from now, it could be 8 months from now. Who knows? But today what I want to talk about was moving books. Now, these are my husband's books. None of these are mine, but moving books. And we're going to be talking about different things. We're going to be talking about sorting them, donating, boxing, and then storing, because that's where I'm at in this process. And I wanted to go along and share with you my process of getting down to those boxes that are going to be stored for hopefully no more than 8 months. Fingers crossed. So step 1, of course, is sorting. Really looking at the books you have and start thinking in a different way. This isn't about books that I love and that I cherish and that I want to read, or books that I did read. It isn't about that. We've got to start sorting them. Put on your sorting hat, good old HP reference there, right? And get to looking at your books in a different manner. The first thing I would say, though, is if when you pick up that book to do whatever with, if it doesn't excite you, then it's a questionable pack. So pay attention to your gut feeling, your reactions to books. Be harsh about it. One of the things I have been doing for 2 years is trying to get as many of my physical books read. So I had a huge amount. I had like over 80, well, I'm going to say it's huge. It was huge for me. At least over 80 to 90 books that were sitting on my bookshelves 2 years ago that I had not read. And I was accumulating more and more, and all it took was one night and book depository and a glass of wine, and my shelf was filled beyond any state appropriate. So over the last 2 years, I've been doing my TBR totally from my own bookshelves. And I've learned some things along the way, which really helped me with this move and with that whole idea of it's time to downsize, truly downsize, and start getting into a manageable place. So 2 years ago, I started my started my book tic-tac-toe, and where I do a randomized generator, and I've got a whole video about how I do that. I'll put that down below for you to be able to see if you want to watch it, of how to start working through your books on your shelf in a fun and interesting way that kind of was like rediscovering. It was like shopping your bookshelves. So doing that process, one of the key things is when a book lands in my hand, and I know it's one of them on my TBR, let's say, I look at it and the first reaction to it. Am I happy? Am I excited? Do I feel the same thing almost I did probably in the bookstore or whenever I did collect that book depository buy moment? Or was there a different reaction? So some of the reactions that I had were, oh great, finally, I've been wanting this book to get on my TBR. And for me, it's a potential TBR. It's 9 books and I usually read 3 out of them. So out of those books, and I'm like, good, it's an option this month, great. So that was my reaction. Well, that's a definitely keeper. That's gonna be packing. But sometimes there was a mix. There was apprehension, possibly, All right, Alex. Sir Alex, I pick up a book, and though it's one that I might want to read, remember these are my husband's books. They're ones I want to read, but they're really big. They're really thick, tons of pages. And I am a slow reader, and I normally only get through 3 books on average in a month. Sometimes I have a better month, but mostly it's 3 books. So I get apprehensive. So I have to think, this might be a wait a minute, because am I going to read a book this thick? I don't know. So that goes to the questionable pile, just for the moment, because that's my gut reaction. It wasn't, oh goody, I get to read Managing My Life by Alex Ferguson. My husband's gonna love this video if he actually watched any of my videos, which he doesn't, because Sir Alex, Manu, yeah, that's our family. We're one of those people. So, but my point being is that then there's other times when I pick up a book and it's like, oh God, this one keeps coming up on my TBR. That reaction is not gonna get a book packed into a box to then be moved, to then be stored, to then have more space on my bookshelf when I finally do set up in our new home. It's just not. So listening to your gut about that, is it one of those of this has come up numerous times and I still don't want to read it? Is it that every time you go to your bookshelf and you're going, what am I going to read? And you just bypass it every time? Start asking yourself, because this is the thing. Our reading taste, what we're interested in, changes. And the books will be there. I promise you. I know this is tough, but it's tough love, because this is the thing. When you look at your book, you need to not be looking at it just from the standpoint that you bought the book, that you purchased the book, that you've invested in the book. It's really about how much more investment in that book are you willing to do? How much more of your time in packing it, unpacking it, storing it? What about the cost? So when you move, if you move yourself, the cost of picking up that box and moving it again and again, and the weight and the heaviness, and the fact that it's going to be yet another box full of books. You also need to think about, if you aren't moving and you're paying somebody to move for you, a lot of times you have to pay by weight, and books weigh a lot. So think of it, cost of books, tonnage with a moving company, the time spent packing, unpacking, and then the amount of money that you're going to spend to store that book. If you're in our situation, if you're in a situation where you can't get all of your stuff and you actually have to store it, embarrassingly like we do, but come on, we did downsize quite a lot to a 1-bedroom. Do I want to pay them to store it? And do I want it to take up space on my bookshelf? Would I rather have a book that either I've enjoyed and want to read again, or maybe I want a book that is going to be the next great read and I'm going to be excited to read it? Or maybe I just want to put my son's little tiny walking boots. By the way, my son's 25. His little flash up fire boot ones. They don't anymore. The batteries are dead. But he used to stomp and they would flash. Maybe that's what I want on my bookshelf instead of books. So those are the things to be thinking about. Those are the things to be considering. And, I know most of you guys out there in Booktube land, very few of you pay full price for books. In fact, that's part of the joy of buying books, I think, is that we feel we're getting a deal, because so many of us are going to be, like I said, escapades with a glass of wine and a lot of extra time and a buy button and incredible deals because it's Book Depository, it's Book Outlet, it's buy one, get one free, it's whatever. Our thrift shop. You're going to the thrift shop, not only are you helping a charity, but you're also buying a book for $1. So really and truly, how valuable is that book? If it was $1 and you're willing to buy a box, which I'll talk about in a second, you're going to pack it, you're going to pay to move it in some form or another. You're either paying for a moving truck, you're doing it yourself, and you get to pay for it in your back from picking up those boxes all the time. Or like in my case, I get to move it and store it and then move it again later. It's got to be a pretty good book. It's got to have a lot of potential. And I'm not going to let something that I bought for $3 necessarily dictate that. So get rid of that guilt. Yeah. we'll talk later about things like how do we maybe stop doing these things, kind of cutting it off before we start it. But right now we all have this. We have a bunch of books and either are needing to move or needing to downsize, or maybe just needing more space for new books that we're actually going to read. Or maybe it's just clearing out your bookshelves. That's what we're talking about. So the biggest thing is, how much space in your life are you going to give this $3 book, $5 book? If it doesn't thrill you when you pick it up and go, oh goody, I get to read about Sir Alex Ferguson in a really big book. That's what we're thinking about. And that's step one, is sorting. We're going to put this book back before I forget. He'll know. He'll walk in and he'll have a sense that something has been touched on his bookshelves. So, he's going to know I touched Alex Ferguson. He's going to know. But, so some lessons that I've learned in all this. Number one is reading taste and interest change, and it's okay, and you need to be fine with that. But that should also motivate you in the future to maybe buy and look at buying books slightly different. And then I think that in a way, this is going to help me also kind of avoid some of those impulse buying things because of what I just physically had to do. That whole making those decisions also, I need to learn from that. I need to learn that getting more books, it isn't so much the buying, it's the reading and appreciating books. And I need to be focusing on something a little bit different. So I hope this was helpful to some degree. If you're planning a move, God bless your heart. That's all I'm going to say. Best of luck with that. If you're thinking of decluttering, this is really, start asking those hard questions. And you might even have to think, would I want to move this, store it, pay for somebody else to? And would you want somebody else to have to do it if something were to happen to you, if you were to get really ill, if you were unable to clear out your own place? Do you really want the books to be the legacy that everybody remembers you by trying to clean out, Mama's house and there's 3,000 books in there? But it is just thoughts from this empty nester, just going through it. And I look forward to talking to you more about the digital journey that I'm going to be trying to do. So I am looking for that Goldilocks method. I'm hoping that Goldilocks moment of just the right amount of physical books with books that have been read, So I'm not a minimalist, but I am really cutting down on stuff and trying to declutter as I go along, especially before we do move into this next place, because it's just another opportunity to do this and then be very conscious about what we're bringing into the house and why. And that includes my books. So thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. And hey, this is video number 2 of the 4 I promised. So as I said, and in a previous video you would have seen, and I'll make sure and look in it. I'm not looking at anything. Oh, God.